Oh my gosh, Bob Shell is a special guest today. Wait, I can't quite
All the
figure
way
out
from
how to put my
Corsicana.
face on here. How the heck are you, Bob?
I'm doing fine. I don't see you on the screen though.
I'm trying to figure out how to get my face on there. I don't know quite how
Lower
to.
left-hand corner, Mary.
Lower left-hand corner.
You'll
All
see
right.
something that looks like a movie camera.
Okay.
If you remember movie cameras, I know you're too young for that, but
On a Rotary meeting.
Well, there you go.
Okay, there we go. Okay, hey. Oh my goodness. You look wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah? Oh, my goodness. How's your better half?
She's doing fine.
Yeah.
She's become very active in the community. She's doing CASA and Meals on Wheels.
Oh my God.
She's keeping busy.
You miss us, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. That's why I joined this. I just had to see your smiling faces.
There you go.
Okay.
Oh man. I'll tell you.
Good morning.
This
hey,
has
Kelly's on. Kelly and Jeff joined.
Good morning, George.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you are.
Good to see you.
Well, I didn't want to ruin the day, but hello, Bob.
Hi, George.
Oh my gosh. How cool. Gosh, it's good to see you. So John, how do I pronounce the area that Valentina is from? Is it Sochi? Russia?
Sochi, Russia.
Sochi? Okay.
She's from the same Sochi where they held the Winter Olympics.
Okay. So is she joining us from Sochi?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll probably be about 5 minutes after 7 by the time she gets on, she said.
Okay. Okay. Bog.
I'm trying to pay attention to
actually
this.
7 in the evening there.
Okay. So Valentina Bogdanova.
You did good.
Well,
You could be a real Russian.
you know what? It comes and goes. That doesn't mean anything. I'd have to practice this a few times. So.
Good morning, Ray.
Ray may not be connected yet.
Don't think Ray has his mic on.
Good morning, guys. Sorry about
There he
that.
is.
Oh, good morning. There he is. Yep. I'm trying to keep an eye on the waiting room to make sure I get everybody, catch people. I wish it would, I thought it would did a ding or something, a chime when people came in.
Well, we have a bunch of dinglings on the line, Bob. You need us to ding for you?
Well, hey, I
Oh,
wasn't going to
thanks a
say
lot.
anything. I wasn't going to say anything about that, but
Speak for yourself, Mr. Rowe.
I have to include all, Mr. Siebert.
Did I see Bob Shell on there?
yes, you
Yes.
did.
Hello, Bob, if you're still there.
Yep, I'm doing a makeup.
Why don't you make that permanent?
If you guys keep meeting online, I can, but that's a long drive just to make a meeting.
I think we all
Yeah.
agree.
Well, you
So
know,
who is this? Who is joining us from Russia or Socia?
Valentina,
What happened to Mary?
I don't know. But anyway, how I connected with Valentina is RI has a mentoring program, and I said, okay, I would be a mentor, and they matched me up with her. She started a club in Sochi.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what happened to Mary?
She just texted me and
Bob,
said her.
do you have a tie on?
She said her internet went down.
Uh-oh.
Ah, that's not good.
Bob Shell, do you
Yes.
have a tie on?
Yes, he does.
Yes, I do. I have
Man.
a hearing later on today, and
Oh, okay.
I don't want to gross you out, but I am in a pair of shorts, but I have to wear a tie
you
and a
doing
sport
those-
coat. I have to wear a tie and a sport coat on the upper half to be presentable to the judge when I do my WebEx hearing later on today.
All right. All right.
I was gonna ask if you were doing virtual meetings,
Yeah, we are. Virtual hearings, actually.
virtual hearings, okay.
Yes.
I
but-
think-
Kelly, you look like you're in the fog.
Well, you may not be able to hear anything. I'm having to do this on my phone.
I can hear you. It just looks real foggy.
He's gonna clean his lens.
Shower.
Oh, there's a crack by my lens. So.
Oh,
All right. Well, I think we should get started. What do you all think?
okay.
Works for me.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to what is this? Our third Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I had planned to start out with our moment of inspiration, but our inspiration speaker was Mary. So, John, you
Wait a
said
minute, she's coming back in.
Okay, well then we'll
Come
give her
back in
just a
right now.
second.
All right, well, I'll give you one. Great people talk about ideas. Average people talk about things. Small people talk about other people.
Very good. Good one.
I like it. Mary, I see you. Can we hear you?
Yeah, I think so. You know,
Perfect.
you have a choice. Don't choose Spectrum. I'm telling you, I have nothing but trouble with them. I think they've
boy.
bugged my house and they know I'm about to end my relationship with them. So,
Uh-oh.
yeah.
Well, we were just getting started and we were going to do our moment of inspiration. I was going to turn it over to you and there you weren't. So Jeff filled us in really quickly on his. Do you have one ready?
Yes, I do. Are you
All right.
ready?
Yep.
Okay. Confidence comes not from always being right, but not fearing to be wrong. How's that?
Very good.
All right.
Okay.
I like it. And it blends really well with the one that Jeff gave us. So thank you, Mary.
You're
Appreciate
quite
that.
welcome. You're welcome.
Okay. So our next topic is This Week in History. And Mr. Smith said that he would handle that for us.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so back in 1994, Kurt Cobain died. He's, of course, a singer with Nirvana.
Mhm.
1955, Winston Churchill retired as Prime Minister of Great Britain. And back in 1614, Pocahontas married John Rolfe in Jamestown, Virginia. That ensured peace between the Jamestown settlers and the Indians for several years. Back in 1933, Franklin Roosevelt established the Civilian Conservation Corps. 1951, the Rosenbergs were sentenced to death for spying. In 1917, the United States officially entered World War I. 1909, Robert Peary almost reached the North Pole. He thought he reached the North Pole, but come to find out after he died about 10 years later, they realized that his navigation was wrong and that he came close, but he didn't really reach the North Pole.
He didn't have GPS.
Right.
Story of my life.
He was using Waze.
Back in 1830, the Mormon Church was established. 1896, the first modern Olympic Games were held in Athens, Greece, with 13 countries participating.
No.
Back in 1970, John Wayne won his first and only Academy Award for his role in True Grit.
True Grit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only?
One of my
His
favorites.
Only.
That's what, yeah, that's what it said.
Yeah. Yeah. You only won one.
Wow.
1974, Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's all-time home run record. 1993, Ellen Ochoa became the first Hispanic woman in space. She was on the Space Shuttle Discovery.
Yeah.
2013, Margaret Thatcher, Britain's first female prime minister, died. In 1865, Robert E. Lee surrendered, effectively ending the American Civil War. Back in 1959, NASA introduced America's first astronauts to the press. And I bet you all remember the names, right? From the right stuff. Scott Carpenter, Gordon Cooper, John Glenn, Virgil Grissom, Walter Schirra, Alan Shepard, and Donald Slayton.
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, yeah. 2003, just 3 weeks into the invasion of Iraq, Baghdad fell to U.S. forces. In 1866, the ASPCA was founded in New York City. And a sad one, 1970, Paul McCartney announced the breakup of the Beatles.
Oh.
And in 1970, Apollo 13 launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida. That was this week in history.
All right. Good job, Mark.
Good job.
Appreciate that. So I know we have a guest, and Bob, I'm going to say that it seems like everybody knows you except for me. So I just wanted
And
to
me.
give you. Okay. So Bob Shell, if you would introduce yourselves to those of us who don't know you, I'd appreciate that.
Well, I'm a former member of this club. I think I started back in, maybe 90, 94, past president. Retired in 2015, left the club, joined the Corsicana Club, and now I live in rural Navarro County, and I'm just joining this meeting because I missed all my fellow Rotarians.
Aw.
Well,
We're glad you're here.
Very happy to have you, and thank you for the intro. I
You know,
guess I should study my
Bob,
history more. I should know past presidents of our club, right?
He's
Bob
one of the
Troyer.
reasons we are what we are.
Bob Troyer, he really came because he misses the breakfasts that I make for him.
Ah.
Oh, Mary, Mary, Mary.
Is
Some
it
things
the
never
truth?
change.
Yeah.
Is it the truth?
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
fair to all concerned?
Really?
It's fair.
I'm just thinking we probably need to come up with some way of having Market Street or somebody deliver breakfast to all of us every Thursday.
I've been waiting for that to get here, and it's
Yeah.
not even.
I was gonna draw a
The
picture
doorbell just
and
hasn't
poke
rung
it
yet.
Are you
All
going,
right.
Chad?
Yeah. All right. So our next agenda topic is happy thoughts, and so that we don't talk over each other, I'm just going to call you each by name. If you've got one, great. If you don't, say pass. So, top of the list, Mr. Corny, do you have a happy thought?
John?
John?
Oh, okay. Yes, I am happy for,
You wanna
I am
unmute?
happy for good neighbors.
You're unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. I didn't want to talk over anybody. I'm happy for good neighbors. Our upstairs neighbor went shopping for Marilyn and I yesterday. It's wonderful. It's one of the good things about this, that we've noticed is it's for a lot of people anyhow, instead of grousing, they're helping each other, and we love it.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's a good one. Thanks, John. Bob Troyer, do you have one?
I'm happy for friends and family. Had a good birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday!
Happy belated.
Have a great wife and great family, and so I'm just happy.
And did you finally make it to 21 years of age?
I did, yes, by 51 years.
Okay.
You celebrated your 51st anniversary of being 21.
Yes, that's about it. That's it.
I like it a lot. Well, I assume that your lovely bride is sitting next to you. I can't see her. Oh, there she is. Roxanne, did you want to share a happy thought?
Just thankful that we're all able to meet. It may not be the most the way we expect. However, it's working, and we're meeting, and that's a happy thought.
Indeed, it's a good one. Marilyn Picorni, you're up.
I'm happy just to be here with you guys. I miss the fellowship. I miss the hugs. I really miss hugs.
Come on, John, get busy.
Well, he finally shaved, so I'm willing to hug him now. We had a Zoom meeting last night of our small faith group, and it's neat to see their faces, but I want to see you guys in person, and I want to touch you.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I'm a hugger, so I've been missing them too, Marilyn. I understand completely. So,
hey Tom, I'm gonna go ahead and I have to jump off. I actually have a call in New York here in about 2 minutes.
Okay.
But I'm happy that we're doing this. This thing is virtual. It's awesome. I want to remind everybody, Modern Woodman is doing some grocery drives and free relief for just COVID events. So we're doing about $250 groceries for a family of 4, or if it's a single person, $150. I think I personally bought close to $2,000 worth of groceries already for families in need through Modern Woodman. But we're also doing, we're releasing nationwide about $20 million in fraternal funds to be used for COVID-related stuff, whether it be nonprofit serving people. I know just got $1,000 to a nonprofit in Carrollton that they were able to. They're feeding about 300 kids a day. Kids who are just really need they need that. They need schools because they eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner there. And so, if you guys know anybody who needs some grocery assistance, if you need grocery assistance, or if you guys know of a nonprofit that's really helping out right now, helping out some families in need or anything like that, just feel free to shoot me an email. I'm going to email out my work email because my personal one is I don't look at it as much. But and so if you anything like that, just let me know. We're just trying to use these funds while they're still there, do some good with them. So thanks.
Thanks,
Perfect.
Michael.
Thank you, Mike.
Have a good day.
All right,
Well done.
All right, well, that's a good one. All right, Mark, you're next on my list.
I'm just generally happy. Glad everybody that I know is still healthy and safe. So
yeah,
that's all I can hope for right now.
That's a good one. Mr. Taylor, you're on mute, but do you have one?
I do. I think my happy thought is that it goes along with what Michael said and what John said. Our default is to help each other when times get tough. That's my happy thought.
Yeah, it's a good one. George, you're up.
Oh, okay. I'm happy that this is half over. It better be half over because I'm half done. I'm hoping for 3/4, but I hope we get back to it real soon. But I'm
Yeah.
like y'all, I'm just happy.
There you go. That's good. Jeff, how about you?
Well, let's see. Like Bob, 64 years ago, I wasn't even alive for 24 hours.
Okay.
Going along with Todd and Mike, you know, just it's becoming natural to help other people. You know, if you don't, you kind of find it's weird that you're not doing something. So,
Right.
yeah.
That's right. Good. All right. Kelly, you're still in a fog, but are you there?
I am here from my fog. I actually have two things that I'm going to say. One, I'm happy for technology because when I gave my Surface to one of my employees because she has an at-risk mother and can't come into the office anymore, I didn't have to lay her off. And secondly, I am happy that I have an office in Denton County because that does not place me under the restrictions, and I'm still allowed to see patients. So I'm very thankful for that.
That's great. Happy to hear that. Thank you. Miss Mary Jones, you're next.
Well, I have two happy thoughts. One, I walk in the morning and I was fortunate enough to see two beautiful little cardinals out front of my house just playing. And it occurred to me that, the world might have stopped for us, but nature just keeps on going. I mean, the rabbits are running around and they're like, where are all these people coming from? What is going on? Why are all of these people walking around in my neighborhood? So it's, it just kind of serves to show you that even though our world has stopped, the world really is continuing to go. We just are having a hard time adjusting to it. And my other happy thought was not only am I excited to see Bob Shell this morning, I mean, that was a real surprise. And I am just as tickled as I can be because Bob, these guys are used to seeing me with no makeup on, but you aren't. So, I am so excited to see you and that I even had the foresight to put lipstick on this morning. But I actually even got to talk to Lori Christos yesterday. We did a Zoom meeting last night, and she asked about our club and sends her best and wanted me to give you all a group hug. So here it is from Lori Christos.
Nice. That's great. I saw her post on Facebook last night that she had that meeting with you, Mary. It made me smile.
Yeah. It was it was just a real lift in my day. She's just such a positive person, and it was just real fun talking with her.
That's great. All right. Mr. Bowens, you're up.
All right. Good morning, guys.
Good
I'm happy for, I'll take two. Well, I'll take three. First of all, I'm happy that business is slow, but we have managed to keep all our employees. So I am very thankful for that. The second thing I'm thankful for, John and Marilyn has taken over my website, and they have been wonderful since April the 1st. Now, I'm going to have to fire them on April 10th. Just a joke, John. but they have, they have been so wonderful with ideas and stuff. And especially, it's taken a lot of pressure off of me because I can concentrate on the business at hand. And the other happy thought on last Tuesday, my church, along with the North Texas Food Bank and the National Guard and the police of Louisville and a few deacons, we passed out 1,388 meals to families as they drove.
Wow. That's great.
Wonderful.
It took about 4 hours, guys, and let me tell you, there was everyone was represented for food. All groups, because people are, you could see the fear in their eyes, but when they got that food, you could smile and waving. So I'm very thankful for that one.
That's terrific.
Ray, I happened to see that. I drove by there, and there were a line of cars going all the way down Bel Air, all the way down to Old Orchard.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
it's a long line.
Yes, and we kept, and everything was kept in order. And like I said, we were very thankful to the National Guard and the police department in our church. So that was a great event.
That is terrific.
How
Those are
cool.
those are some pretty darn good happy thoughts there, Ray. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. Terry Kaysen, how about you? You're muted. Oh, now you're not.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Terry.
Especially wanted to extend a welcome and a welcome back message to Mr. Shell, a friend and former fellow board member for Honor Flight. So welcome, Bob. It's awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good to hear your voice, Terry.
Likewise, likewise. Hey, I've got 3 happy thoughts for today. First of all, I'm glad to be here, of course, as I am every Thursday. My second happy thought, which comes with no scientific evidence, is that I feel that we're on the downslope. That's what my gut tells me.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. And my third happy thought is that I'm really glad you all owe the club a lot of money for these happy thoughts.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, really. That's good, Terry. Thank you very, very much. So, Mr. Shell, did you have a happy thought that you wanted to share?
Well, I'm just happy that I got John's message and I could join you this morning for a while. Actually, I've got several things coming up right now and I'm going to have to drop off, but it really is good to see all your faces. I'm glad the club is still up and going and doing well. And I hope all of you have a great day and we get over this catastrophe very soon.
Amen.
And maybe I'll make that long trip up there someday to see you all in person. But right now I've got to drop off. So have a great day and thanks for the invite.
Good to see
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for
Give
joining
us
me.
a hug for us, okay?
Bye now.
All right. So I think I covered anybody. Did I miss anybody but me?
Your turn.
All right, my turn. So I've got a couple. Very briefly, I am going to once again talk about how happy I am to have chosen so very well back in high school. My shelter partner and I are still getting along quite well. Thank you very much. All is good on this end. I am also going to say that I'm happy about technology, to be able to do things like this, and to also keep my my shelter-in partner happy in that she can still see her grandsons, because it's driving her crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm gonna share a business one too. I had pretty much made the decision that I was out of business until all of this was gonna blow over, and all of a sudden, past customers started calling and asking if I could refill their wine racks. And so in the last 5 days, I've sold 63 bottles of wine. Go figure. So those are my happy thoughts. And of course, just thrilled to death to be able to see each and every one of you. Like Marilyn, I'd rather be hugging on you, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, and now I'm really happy.
What do I do next? Just listen. That's you up there. Oh, okay.
So
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, hey, Gordon, how you doing?
Gordon. Yes, good morning.
Well, Gordon, we were just wrapping up happy thoughts, so I wonder if you might want to share one before we
Happy
move on.
thoughts. Well, let's be glad that we're all healthy.
Exactly.
As
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned, all of the row extended clan are healthy. So
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I am not aware of anybody in my circle that has had a problem. So I think that's great news. So, all right. Well, we are going to move on to our next item on our agenda. We decided we'd use some of this time to get back to having all of our members have an opportunity to tell us something about themselves. That was a recommendation by Mr. Troyer, and you know what happens when you recommend something?
You get elected.
You get to be selected. So, Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you, and looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay, well, some of you heard this before. I've added a few things to it, but anyway, I guess everybody can see my screen, maybe?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm trying to say, basically do who am I, how did I get here, that sort of thing. So basically, first of all, I'd like to say that I am a Christian doing the best to live out the golden rule. So, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I am a father with 2 grown successful daughters, 3 grandkids, 1 grandson, plus several stepchildren, step grandkids, and step great grandkids. And I don't even know how many because, you know,
I just had one last
see,
night. One great one last night.
another one last night. Okay, well, keep growing. Okay, I'm a computer scientist, designing and implementing identity verification document imaging systems. I'm a Rotarian, and I am a member of the Louisville City Council. And my goal on the City Council is to keep our Vision 2025 plan going. And I am happy to say that even with the current situation, we are still moving forward on a lot of fronts, and our city staff is doing a great job. And I do want to compliment Todd and the police force for doing everything they're doing right now.
Here, here.
I know it's a tough job, and we're glad to have them doing that. I got here through it. It's been a lifelong process, and like we said, 51 anniversaries of my 21st birthday. A lot of it is serendipitous. I've had a lot of places where, looking back, I can see that there were things that happened in my life that that I had a choice, and without knowing what I was doing, I would take one, you know, one road and not the other one, and it's all led here. So those were basically early church experiences, educational experiences, and life experiences. In fact, I could do a whole program on some of those serendipitous things that I look back on as being essential to coming to where I was. One was a fork in a sidewalk on the campus of Purdue University. If I'd gone the other direction, I wouldn't be here today. I'm convinced of that. And another was an incidental comment that one woman made in a Sunday school class I was teaching one time. Just a short comment that I remembered years later, which also helped bring me here. For those of you who might not know it, I grew up as a Mennonite in a very small village in northern Indiana. Population over the course of the 10 years that we lived there, the population, the number of people who lived in the village during the time that we lived there was 53. So there were 53 people that I grew up with there in Valentine, Indiana. The northern Indiana is the 3rd largest Amish settlement in the world, followed behind Ohio and Pennsylvania. And this upbringing, I was a Mennonite, which was where the Amish actually came from Mennonites. I can do a whole program on that too. And this Anabaptist upbringing is what basically emphasizing believers' baptism, the Golden Rule, and the Sermon on the Mount have informed my entire life. When I was growing up in the Valentine, we had a bookmobile that came through town, and I would typically check out 4 or 5 books on a weekly basis, starting when I was in I think 3rd grade. And a lot of them, as I got older, were related to career possibilities. The first one that I remember was on being a CSI with the FBI. And so one of my earliest aspirations was to work in a lab at the FBI. Of course, that didn't come to fruition, but it was one of my earliest career possibilities. In the 6th grade, I happened to pull a book off the shelf called I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. And from that point on, I was hooked on science and math through science fiction. And I read every book that I could find on science fiction, and my bookshelves in the house right now have a whole, I don't know how many science fiction books I have, but there are a bunch. And Roxanne would probably like to get rid of a bunch of them. But,
No, that's fine.
but anyway, I worked my way through a small private Mennonite school in Goshen, Indiana. My parents, I told my parents I wanted to go to this school because I had some friends there, older friends who had already gone there, a cousin who'd gone there, and I told them that I would like to go. And they said, well, that's fine, but we can't afford to send you. So if you want to go, you're going to have to work your way. You're going to have to raise the money. So I started working to raise money to put myself through school. So I paid for my high school. At the time, I was extremely shy, and I spent most of my time studying. When I wasn't studying, I taught myself to play guitar. So that's where I learned that. During this whole time, we were moving often too. So I lived in we moved 13 times before I turned 18. Lived in 11 different houses. And of course, if you look at the math, that means we lived in 2 of those houses twice. But anyway, we moved around. I did well in all my high school subjects, or all my subjects, but in high school, but especially math and sciences were the ones that drew me. During my high school years, I had what I guess would be a crisis of faith. Mennonite doctrine emphasizes Sermon on the Mount and the Golden Rule and believer's baptism, but it also is a very stern, strict, at the time was very stern and strict. And I was struggling with some of the things about a vengeful God that I just couldn't reconcile with some of the things that I was reading, and also some of the things that I was taught that didn't seem to follow the scientific things that I was reading. But in my junior year, I took a course in Bible. Actually, the book Isaiah was taught by J.C. Winger, who was a stern Mennonite bishop, and I wish I had the picture to show you, but he was a straight coat wearing stern Mennonite bishop, but he was always chuckling. He always had a chuckle on his face. And during the process of teaching the book of Isaiah, he finally showed me that God is a God of love and not vengeance. So that sort of pointed me in the right direction there. And the other teacher I had at Bethany Christian High School was Mr. Hartman, who was my physics teacher. And he inspired my love of physics and a desire to teach. And he really impressed on me that science and faith don't have to be in conflict. And that was one of the other things that really made me feel good, that you could read the Bible and not have to put your mind on the shelf as you were reading. By the way, he left the year after I graduated from Bethany. He went to the University of Iowa to get his PhD in physics, and then he ended up being the Iowa Director of Education, whatever the title. He was in charge of education in Iowa. I graduated second in my class at Bethany in '66. Went on to Goshen College, also in Goshen, Indiana. There I started out as a chemistry major, but as most everybody, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and I realized that chemistry was a lot of memorization. So then I switched to mathematics, which was much more clear cut. But then I also realized that there wasn't a whole lot that I would be probably able to do with that. So I finally switched to physics. I think in my sophomore year, I guess. And there again, I had a major prof, Robert Buschert, who really got me interested in physics and really piqued my interest in it. Also in teaching, and he also reinforced the ability to be both a scientist and a person of faith. He was actually a very prominent physicist. He could have been. He was a fellow at Bell Labs. He was an adjunct professor at Purdue University. He invented a means of testing impurities in semiconductors. We set up a lab at Goshen College. Actually built his invention, and the little small physics lab at not Purdue, Goshen College, for several years after I left, was a major test site for semiconductor materials. People from all over the world sent their semiconductor materials to the lab at Goshen to test for impurities. He had developed a means of testing that was at least 10 times better than any other device in the world. So we built that at this little lab in northern Indiana, school of 1,200 students at the time. Got my BA in physics in 1970, went to Purdue University for grad school, and since there were 5 of us from the physics department at Goshen that went on to Purdue, I decided that rather than follow along with all those in semiconductor physics, that I would go a different direction and take up nuclear physics. I didn't really think that through very much, other than I wanted to be away from the guys that I had spent 4 years with at Goshen. Wasn't really thinking ahead to the fact that there was not very much that you could do with a nuclear physics degree in 1972. When I did this presentation the first time, I had ordered this shirt, and it didn't get here on time, so I put the picture of it in the presentation. Now today I'm wearing it, so it did come soon after that presentation. But anyway, after graduating from Purdue, I had a very hard time finding a position. At the time in 1972, about the only options for a physics degree, especially in nuclear physics, I had basically 3 options. I could teach, I could build nuclear bombs, or I could build nuclear submarines. Now, my background as an Anabaptist made me uncomfortable thinking about building bombs or submarines. And I really wanted to teach anyway, as I had been inspired by now Dr. Hartman and Dr. Buschert. So that fork in the road, or fork in the sidewalk at Purdue led me to Owens Technical College in Toledo, Ohio. I got a job. I'd got an appointment as an assistant professor in the engineering technology department, and I started out teaching physics and math. Because it was a small school, I think we had 2,500 students or something like that at the time. I was in a small department. I ended up having to teach. I taught physics and math to begin with, and then I was asked to teach some basic electronics and programming. Did that for a year and a half, and then in 1974, Motorola and Intel introduced their 8-bit microprocessors. And at that point, since at that point, the department decided that we probably needed to be teaching our students something about these new devices that were possibly going to make a change in the electronics world. So I was given the task of developing a course in microprocessor technology. And I taught the first course like that in the state of Ohio in the 75-76 school year. Now, the University of Cincinnati claims that they were the first school in the state to have a course, but they base that on the fact that they published their catalog first before my course was in our catalog at Owens Tech. But anyway, I taught that course. Well, this was the first days of microprocessors, and there was nothing available. No lab equipment, there were no textbooks, there was nothing available to do this. So I had to do everything myself. I contracted with a local company called TL Industries to build my lab equipment. During the process of getting that done, Tuck Lee, who is the owner and president of TL Industries, after about a year, asked me if I would like to come to work for him on a part-time basis, writing programs, and specifically wanted me to write a cash register program for a drive-in restaurant chain. It's similar to Sonic. I forget what the name was up there, but anyway, it was a restaurant chain. They wanted a cash register. And I told Tuck, I've only ever written 3 programs in my life that did anything besides just move numbers around. First of all, I did a multiplication program as a high school student on a field trip to the Argonne National Laboratories as a senior. I wrote a program as an undergraduate that helped do some calculations for our the double crystal X-ray spectrometer lab. And in grad school, I wrote a program as part of a team that designed the head of an electromagnet for a particle accelerator. So that was my software experience. And now he's asking me to write this program for a cash register. And I said, that's my experience. He told me that he thought I could probably do it. So I started out, I wrote the program. Cash register actually worked. People were able to take, they were able to take orders and schedule the trips out to the drive up where the cars that were in the parking lot, everything. So I did that, and it took about 9 months to write the program. And after that was installed and running, Tuck Lee came to me again and said, how would you like to come to work for me as my software manager? And I said, well, Tuck, I've only ever written 4 programs in my life. The first one, and the fourth one was the one for you. He said, oh, you can do it. So in 1978, I came to work for Tuck Lee at TL Industries as software manager. During the next 6 years then, I managed about 60 process control projects. One of the most interesting was the first dashboard computer for Ford Motor Company. I did the dashboard computer for the 1980 Mark IV. I think it was actually a Mark VI by the time it was introduced, but I wrote the software for that first dashboard computer doing, miles per gallon and miles to empty and estimated time of arrival and all that kind of stuff. And had a total of 60 projects. Just before I left TL Industry, well, first of all, one of the projects that we did was an identity verification system that we did for a small company down here in Richardson. The owner of that company was Don Wetzel, who happened to be the inventor of ATMs. I moved down here down here in April 15th of 1984 to join AutoSig Systems as their director of development and support. But Don Wetzel, who had started that company, was actually the inventor of ATMs. I worked for Don for 25 years before I knew that he was the inventor. I knew that he had been involved in it, but I didn't realize that it was actually his idea. And sort of, you know, it's sort of the type of guy he was. He didn't flaunt his own laurels. But anyway, I've been with that company now ever since. Actually, I thought at the time, you know, I taught at Owens Tech for 6 years. I worked for TL for 6 years. So when I moved down here, I thought, well, that must be some kind of an omen. So come 1990, I'll probably have to be looking for a job. But I've been working for the same company ever since. So directed that product through 4 generations. And it's now a full-fledged document imaging system. But we're no longer actively promoting it because big boys stole out of all of our ideas, and they have the marketing background, so can't do anything. But in 2011, after a series of life changes, I joined Louisville Morning Rotary. Howard O'Neill had been after me for about 10 years to join. He started inviting me when y'all were meeting at what was Village Grill?
Village Grill.
You know, we started. That's where I came for the first couple meetings, and then he finally, after about 10 years of inviting me about every other year, he'd invite me to a meeting and try to get me to join. Finally, in 2011, I did. And then in 2013, I was trying to come up with a fundraiser that would involve bicycle riding, because several years before that, I had started riding bike and bicycles, and I was trying to come up with a way of getting a fundraiser for the club, and I wanted to make it a family bike ride of about 10 to 12 miles inside Louisville. I wanted to stay in Louisville just because we were Louisville Morning Rotary. And I was unsuccessful in finding a 10 or 12 mile trail in Louisville, contiguous, that would be a family-friendly ride. I finally found one way of doing it that would have involved doing a circuit from Central Park to Memorial Park, back to Central Park, up to, I forget what the name of the park is north of there. We would have had to do the trip twice in order to get up to 12 miles. So, and there was a part along Corporate Drive that I was not comfortable with at all. So anyway, I decided that I was going to try to get the city to do something about that, to get the trails together. And at the time, the city was advertising for citizens to join this thing called Vision 25, which was an effort to come up with what the city wanted to look like in the year 2025, which is Louisville's 100th anniversary. So I decided to get involved and maybe influence the city to develop more bike trails. Well, I managed to, I got involved with the Parks Department, or actually I found out after I went to the first Vision 2025 meeting after being appointed to the committee that the Parks Department had already come up with a plan to do everything that I wanted to do. So my reason for joining for getting involved with the city sort of went away at that point. But I stayed on the Vision 2025 committee, working on other issues. And when that plan was adopted by City Council in 2015, I worked on the bond issue to get the bond issue passed that would allow us to implement the plan. After the bond issue passed, I was then appointed to a continuing committee that was supposed to make sure that the city council and staff followed the implementation of the big moves. And I was also appointed to the park board. So anyway, in 2017, several actually councilmen approached me and suggested that I should run for city council, and where I could actually do something besides advice and actually help make decisions. So I took their advice, ran after the long campaign, which included a runoff. I was elected to city council, place 1, and was sworn in on June 19th, 2017. So I'm now at the end of my first term, was up for re-election this year. Luckily drew no opponents, because it would have been really hard to be campaigning right now without being able to go out and talk to people. So luckily no one filed against me. So I will be reappointed. I will be re-elected by acclamation on May 13th or whatever it is. And TJ Gilmore and I are planning to have a celebration of our re-election that day. So we hope to have a celebration that evening. But anyway, that's sort of how I got here. Like I said, it's been a lot of looking back. I see a lot of places where a door just opened and I went through it and it took me to the next step. And here I am. But I do think that my early upbringing in Indiana has influenced everything that I've done since. So, any questions or?
Well, I was going to say that that stuff that you did back in the 78 to 84 time frame sounded an awful lot like Star Trek stuff to me.
Looking back, some of it does. There were some really interesting.
Yeah.
I did, like I said, I did several projects during that time period, and it was the last two. I was actually, the thing that strikes me the most is the last 2 projects that I actually wrote proposals for, neither one of them which the company took. When I was getting ready to move down here, I was working on one project that was a computer controller for a chicken house that would have controlled feed and water and air movement through the chicken house. And one of the requirement for that device was that they had to come in under $100. Each controller had to be less than $100. At the same time, I wrote a proposal for an engine test bed that was going to be installed at General Motors. We were a subcontractor for IBM, and that was a $17 million per unit program. So I was working on a $17 million project, and a $100 project at the same time.
Wow.
And,
that's wild.
So anyway, that's me.
Oh, Bob, that was great. Thank you very, very much. I knew some of it, but certainly not all of it. Fascinating life you've lived. And it's funny, I think a lot of us could probably say that we just kind of fell into things, and back when I was working in banking, I can't tell you how many people asked me how I got there.
And
I don't know, it just happened, right?
Yeah. Well, like I said, those forks in the road definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, the major one is that when I was walking through the campus of Purdue University and went left instead of continuing straight ahead. That made all the difference.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's funny, as I was saying that, I thought of Todd, because I had lunch with him one day and was learning a little bit about his history. He's probably the person on this call who knew at a very early age exactly what he was going to be doing.
I know. I think of that all the time.
Yeah. All right. Well, friends, we're just about out of time. And so I just wanted to let you know that we have a guest speaker coming to next Thursday's meeting. John has arranged for someone from, is it the Salvation Army, John? Am I remembering that right?
Sorry, I'm unmuting. Yes, Salvation Army. It's Steve Thomas. He's the, I can't remember what title he has for the Salvation Army, Colonel or something like that. But anyways, he's responsible for the food kitchen at that they have here in Louisville, and he's also responsible for the housing they have in Denton. Of course, they're up to their eyeballs right now with COVID-13.
Yeah.
Which is really
Yeah, he's in charge of everything in Denton County for the
That's
Salvation
correct.
Army.
That's correct.
Yeah, should be fascinating. So thanks for arranging for that. All right. Well, I think we're ready to close out. And as Gordon reminded us last week, we really needed to recite the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. So first,
is it the truth?
The truth.
Second,
Is
Is
it
it true for all
concerned.
third,
will build
Goodwill
goodwill and benefit.
friendship.
fourth,
Will be
Be beneficial to all concerned.
and last.
Make it
Make it fun.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. This was fun, and look forward to seeing you all again next week. Stay healthy. Stay safe.
See ya.
Bye.
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 See ya.
Bye.